For an introduction, I'm John Eichstead. I'm a customer success manager here at Elements Cloud. Prior to joining the team here at Elements, I spent almost a decade as a platform architect and joined this team about 9 months ago.
And I'm Tomasz Ramos. I'm a technical product manager at Elements.cloud, and I'm responsible for our metadata dictionary and dependency reporting capabilities. And that's a really good segue, since today we're going to take a look at enhancements we've introduced to our change intelligence platform to make it faster and easier to understand that the work that needs to be done and the action that you can gather information and transfer it into actionable items. So the capability as a whole, we call it Metadata Explorer. There are 4 tools included in that capability. And one of those tools, most of you already know, that's the dependency trees. So today we're going to focus on custom views of metadata, dependency grids, along with our metadata search. And each of those tools addresses different aspects of impact assessment. We have also made enhancements to our stories to make them tools for exploration as well.
And can you talk about what led us to develop these features? What drives our development on this?
Well, there is one significant thing that always drives our feature and platform enhancements, and that's the customer feedback. We're very committed to continuous discovery, as we call it. So we are in a infinite loop of gathering feedback and identifying needs from our users, and then we use job to be done methodology to improve and make it faster, to enhance our platform so users can commit to changes with confidence. And for features within Metadata Explorer, we've identified 2 important jobs in the scope of impact assessment, and that is understanding the impact of change and also enhancing system performance through precise metadata analysis. So we assist you in identifying risks and impacts and in managing complexity. We build solutions to support the shift left approach based on the information we've gathered from users. So, John, what challenges were presented by traditional forms of metadata management in your experience?
The biggest thing for me was always time. I worked in fairly mature, complex orgs, and the potential impact of even the smallest change can be large. And as we get bigger and bigger and we do more on the platform, it takes more and more time to investigate all of those potential impacts. And if we want to do less work on that assessment up front, then we have to make up for that by doing more complete testing on the backside before we release. So either way, we're putting in a large amount of time to make sure we don't accidentally break something.
Right. And that's exactly what we've heard from our customers. What is needed is a faster way to perform your due diligence, and to create comprehensive documentation that is a basis that you can then turn into work items. So we wanted to give you tools to perform targeted analysis at a larger scale. And that's how we've come up with the idea of custom views of metadata, which at its fundamental purpose serves as a way of looking at your metadata structure so you can pick which types of metadata and attributes you want to see. And that gives you a tailored um, perspective on your Salesforce configuration. This is tech debt identification simplified. So the feature helps you see and plan for bigger changes. It's great for figuring out what parts of project are most important, understanding how big the changes will be, and seeing what might be affected or need extra attention. It also helps make sure you're fully aware of what's in the system before making decisions. Plus, you can pick out specific metadata that fits your criteria and work on it directly, like tagging or creating tasks for developers straight from the results screen.
Before I get to the next thing, I know there was a lot of work that went into this on the back end. Um, how long did it take for us to develop and release this feature?
So John, there were two teams of developers engaged in that project for roughly 15 months. So the backend capabilities were designed in a way that are reusable not only for the purpose of custom use of metadata, but also for our next steps in your dependency analysis.
That's actually a pretty good turnaround time for setting up, the future growth as well. So jump into the next one because this is one of my um, favorite new features. So as we said, most people are familiar with the dependency trees, and those were really great being able to visually see those dependencies, how far down they go. But what I was always looking for was something that I could actually do work with. And that's what the dependency trees gave us. So it can be accessed either from the custom views of metadata or from the dependency tree directly. And it gives us that information about what the item is, what it's related to, read, write, trigger information, descriptions of the relationship, and it's filterable. You can access in the right panel the details of each particular dependent metadata item. You can export it, and more critically, you can action on it, such as Tomas mentioned earlier, adding or replacing tags, creating single stories, multiple stories, adding to existing stories. So it's not just, hey, this thing is great to look at and informative, but we can actually take this and turn it into something that someone can actually do some work on. And
Absolutely.
that takes me into the next piece, which was also right along with that, the enhancements to the user stories. So before we could just connect the metadata as nodes and then show up as kind of a dependency on the story. But now each of those metadata nodes has a status, pick list for outcome, and a description field. So you actually put notes for each piece of metadata that you add in and the status of it. So whether there's multiple things that you need people to work on for making changes or updates to an existing flow or class, you can also do investigation, right? If I need to look at, there's a bunch of reports that some field is used in that we might delete. We need to evaluate those reports, add them all in, and now we can look and say, okay, go through one at a time. Also great for um, keeping track of things like migrating workflows or process builder workflows over to Flow, right? As we get each one of them done, we can tag them off. The other thing we've added here is the Open API integration. So for a long time, a few years now, we've had the Jira connection out of the box, but there's a lot of our customers that don't use Jira. So now we have an open API that your development teams can use to create that integration between what you're using for DevOps and for to elements. So I'm going to start with the custom view of metadata. I'm going to create one real quick. So I'm going to come down and create a new view. Now, the use case I'm going to show here, we have a managed package that we are no longer using and want to get rid of. But Obviously, there's some things that go along with that. Many of you have probably experienced the pain of having to remove it, run into a bunch of things that are dependent and you can't remove it. So I'm going to start off by looking at the fields for data PM, and I'm just going to grab the API name and the subtype for now. We have more fields if you wanted to look at, percent data population for it or impact to, have some other assessment on it as well.
I'd just like to
Um,
add that you can select multiple different metadata types to be included in a single view. And depending on the types of metadata you have selected, there are different attributes you can then set as a criteria for the display. And at the moment, I believe we have roughly 78 different attributes you can set and based on those, you can get criterias up to your liking.
yeah. And for a quick note on the filters, when you're filtering on things like the parent object or parent managed package, we're actually looking into the metadata dictionary to find the items, and it's multi-selectable. So as you pick it, it's going to add that pill. Now, the one thing you have to remember to do is hit add. Otherwise, it doesn't add the filter. It's just waiting for you to put in another item. But that's great for looking at dependencies across multiple objects at once or multiple packages at once. So I'm going to go ahead and confirm that. And so what we're getting here is all of the items that are data PM. And now we only show 100 at a time. So you do have to select, but you can go page through and see the next one and page through. And as I said, we can take this and we can look in the right panel. We can see the individual dependencies for each of that. You can open up the trees. So you can actually do some investigation here. But then the other piece is you can mass action. So we can add, this is the replacing tags, adding tags. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to open a dependency grid.
By the way, the results from the previous screen, so the subset of the metadata based on your criteria, you can download that in a form of a CSV file for any interrogation you might like in your spreadsheet.
Yep. So up here, it will give you that option, and that's both from the custom view of metadata and the dependency grid. We can export to a spreadsheet. Now in here, as I said, you'll get this information, not just the API side, but what's the operations on the page or in the flow or whatever that is attached to, read or write. There's a trigger action there. You can see trigger. The relationship detail is actually a generated text, not AI generated, just a text we generate, showing what kind of summarizing what that relationship is. And then what I'm going to do here is, because when I'm removing a package, I don't care about dependencies that are inside the package. I'm going to remove anything that starts with data PM underscore underscore. So these are the dependencies that are connected outside of this package. Page layouts and reports, not usually too surprising. What I want to do here is I want to go ahead and select all of these, and I'm going to create a story. And if I'm creating a real story, I will write a lot more in here. So now I'm going to jump over to my changes. And in this right panel, here are each of those items. And then I can put in what that outcome is once I investigate what I need to do with this. And the status. So each one of these I can track separately and put notes in for what it is.
Well, and that is absolutely great for your change management. That's why we'd like to call the wider idea for those feature a change intelligence. I would only like to elaborate on one thing that I think is extremely important in both dependency grid um, and why the dependency reporting is the relationship description that John has showed you. It not only shows you, let's say, how a field is used in a report, is it a column grouping or a filter? It will name, for an example, a logical block in a flow where a field or a pick list value or a record type is used. It will show you in which part of your Lightning page a field is used, and if it is just used in a field section or it is a another filter on a component. So you have an ability to go into very granular insight about your dependencies, and and this capability, meaning dependency grid, stories, and custom views of metadata, is sort of one wider workflow. What I would like to
Well, hold on 1 second before we go on to the next thing.
sure.
We had a clarification question on there. Warren, yes, the grid view is available right now. It actually has been live for a little while now. The way to access it from a dependency tree is from right-clicking on that source metadata item in the tree. So whatever is blue on the far left. The thing is, you do have to have edit in that org model. So whichever thing, and that's the same thing to create a custom view of metadata. So from either of those, if you do not have edit in the org model, it will not currently let you open up that grid view. All right.
Sure. So another use case outside of the automated dependency reporting that John has just demoed and we spoke about in detail is what we call metadata search. And what it does, it actually allows you to search through metadata definitions for either IDs, a string that you manually insert, or there is a third operating mode, but I will speak about that in a second. So when I say you look for IDs, as you can see on those screenshots, you can select an entire org. So the grouping node at the top of your org model is a grouping node for all your org metadata. And by accessing context menu, you will find the hard-coded references in code option. And when you select that, you either can pick finding all hard-coded IDs, I mean all hard-coded IDs of all metadata in your entire org. And that's done automatically. And it brings in just surprising amount of references. Another type of this dependency investigation is you can insert a string, be it a error code or let's say an update action or an email address, be it a username or sorts, and again you can search for that specific string in your metadata definitions. So for now, the two operating modes are available for Apex classes, Apex triggers, and flows. But I've literally today have accepted further enhancement, and we're going to be releasing it very, very soon to extend the metadata definition scope that you're going to be searching through for Aura components, Lightning Web components, email templates, formula fields, validation rules, Visual Force pages, and Visual Force components. And the third operating mode that I wanted to talk about, but it's still in testing at the moment, is what we call a node search. So instead of selecting a grouping node in your org model, you would select an individual node for a metadata component and search for this particular metadata ID, label, and API name at the same time in all metadata definitions that I've listed previously. So this feature tackles the problem of finding hard-coded references, which can slow down system performance. And it makes it not only much faster to find and fix these issues, but it allows a single person to go through identifying, let's say, hard-coded IDs, which previously, if you wouldn't know what sort of ID you're looking for, you would not be able to find it. Now you're doing it all at the same time automatically. So it gives absolute superpower to admins. So let me demo the metadata search for you quickly. Okay, go. Right. So this is one of our sandboxes, and I'll simply go and find hard-coded IDs in code. So it will open another tab and it will show the progress of this job. It's very efficient, very performant. And here we go. So these are all hard-coded IDs in flows that we have in there's even an Apex class with a hard-coded account. So the results allow you to see where you have found your ID, what it is the metadata type that you found your IDs in, what is the literal ID, what this ID represents, and if we have found that ID and the metadata that it represents, what it is, and also how many times it is found in that metadata definition. You can share the results of that search. You can also, same as in the dependency grid or custom views, you can multi-select, mass action, add a tag to classify it. You can also create a story. But if you want to create a story for metadata, you have to, because of the pagination limitations, you have to have maximum of 50 items. So you can create a story per node or add all the selected metadata and references to a single story. And when you do assign a single story to a single metadata, the story's description is going to be populated automatically with the search results. So then the time you spend between investigating and turning that into actionable items is basically irrelevant because it takes minutes instead of weeks or months as it was. So that's the first, and I think it's the most powerful part of this new feature. But let me show you how we can go and find a specific string, be it a elements.cloud domain. And again, you can close this tab because the results are going to be presented to you asynchronously. But you can see that at elements.cloud was found multiple times in flows and Apex classes. And again, it shows you how many references were found and what sort of metadata it is. But also a use case that I think is quite powerful as well is looking for, let's say, delete. So we're looking for action in Apex classes, right? And here we go. And we see that, let's say, commission reset is used in a flow 174 times. So this again gives you a very, very precise way to analyze your dependencies and hard-coded references. And unfortunately, I couldn't get the third operating mode ready for demo at this point. but you can trust me on my word. It's going to be out very, very soon. Um, and I think that's sort of finishes the presentation and the demo I've had ready. I think we're ready for questions. John and I are always happy to engage in discussions.
Well,
So
yeah, actually, real quick before we jump into the questions, this really does address a lot of we've had questions and requests from numerous customers, and I know this is always a thing for me as well. Um, Finding these things, right? When we were looking at the demo for the hard-coded IDEs, you saw a lot of those were record types, and that's so common. I've seen that in just about every org I've looked in, is people will hard code record types, and I was actually surprised that there weren't as many hard coded in Apex classes. But those can always be kind of an annoying thing to find and trip you up. But then, with adding in the web components and email templates, that's going to be huge. Um, we're getting, people always ask about finding hard-coded email addresses and email templates, or potentially visual force components or older web components, because those can trip people up. But then the node search, um, that can help find those templates that are pulling the information from the page, right? You have the mail merge basically, and before you delete something, you want to make sure that this isn't being used in an email template somewhere. So that's going to be a great utility as well. I think people get a lot of use out of that and come back to us with some requests for additional search terms.
close with a just one sentence. I think that this new functionality, Metadata Explorer, is much more than just a tool. It's designed to solve specific important problems in the Salesforce world, and it is fundamental for change intelligence. So it will it will have a direct impact on how people do their job.
So a couple links for you. Um, Obviously the book a call. So go ahead and book a call with us. That will allow you to get with our customer success team. That would be me and Jim or a few other people. There's also the Academy link. So we've started to put some new content in there. Um, Savory specifically has done a lot of work on that. In the impact analysis section, we go through really the use case that I just did, and it dives a little deeper. But we're starting to add a lot more content and in there around the new features and stuff. The other piece is we know that we have not done the best job of communicating a lot of these new features. Some of them have been in for months, and so we want to make sure we do better at that. So we will be putting stuff in there. There will probably be some new stuff in app. Some of you may have noticed a pop-up about this particular call. Um, so we're going to make sure we put some little things in there when we add new features like this so you can start making use of them sooner. And we'll put stuff in the academy for that deeper dive. Not super deep, right? There'll be the 5-minute thing that will show you how to use it and show you a use case. Feel free to book calls with us if you see something and you want to know more about it. Or if you just want to find out what the new stuff we're working on is. Um, let us know. We're happy to take a meeting, 15 minutes, 30 minutes to go over stuff, whatever you need.